Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Naruto video. In this one I'm going to be reviewing the Naruto novel, Sasuke's Story, Star Pupil. So I reviewed Naruto's story, Family Day, a few days ago, and I will be reviewing Shikamaru's story, Morning Clouds, in a couple of days. So look out for that. But we're here to deal with this Sasuke book, Star Pupil. Family Day has already been adapted in the anime. This hasn't, nor has the Shikamaru story, as far as I'm aware. So this is kind of completely new content unless you've read this book already. So that's kind of interesting. My take on the where it's set is because of the arc that they have with Boruto. I think it's definitely set before all the Kara stuff happens. So it's at the very least it's before the whole Ao arc, because Boruto still is kind of very anti-scientific ninja tools, and kind of anti-science is more of the angle they take in this book, and I think that roughly fits kind of where we are. So that's roughly the sort of placement here, and my general feeling about the book is that I'm surprised, given that this book's been out for a while in Japan, that over the last couple of years in the anime, they didn't just decide to do some, like, an adaptation of this to sort of fill time between them getting to the big manga arcs. I think there's enough interesting stuff in this book to where it would have made for a solid, 2-3 episode arc, maybe a little bit more if they wanted to expand it out a bit. Because there's some really cool dynamics in this book, because obviously Sasuke is the focus here, with the general idea of the book being that Konohamaru gets injured towards the start of the book, so he can't be the leader of the team for a little bit. So Sasuke ends up filling in as the leader for Team 7, which is a really fun dynamic because you get to see him as a teacher to everyone, not just the sort of unique dynamic he has specifically with Boruto, but training Sarada, training Mitsuki, and just being like, this is what it would be like if Sasuke just stuck around the village and took on that role of a team leader. That's, to me, very fun, very exciting to see. There's obviously another plot going on in the background, which I'll get into, but I think we have to start with the prologue of the book, which is where Konohamaru gets injured. And what happens is that he's on the Thunder Train, and he notices, oh, Sasuke's here as well, I'll go over and talk to him. Just as he gets over to Sasuke, a bomb goes off on the train, and immediately Konohamaru and Sasuke jump into action. So Sasuke's obviously lightning quick. He reacts to the situation immediately, gets straight into dealing with the explosion, whereas Konohamaru concerns himself more with sort of organizing the people so that there's not a panic. Showing you the difference in their sort of characters there. That makes sense. And obviously the train has, a bomb has gone off on it, and there's also some assailants on board. So immediately there's a couple of like action set pieces going on here. But even though they're not particularly skilled, they're willing to sort of sacrifice themselves and not allow themselves to be captured. So anytime Konohamaru grabs someone, one of their comrades will just kill that person. They are making sure they won't be taken in all of this. And that makes it tricky for Konohamaru because he's trying to capture them without like killing them, but they're not allowing that. And then they're also, willing to do sort of, suicide attacks. So even though Konohamaru and Sasuke have a skill advantage, they have to deal with, bombers who are willing to just blow themselves up on a whim. And, he gets in a little bit too close to one he has the advantage over, and I think a bomb goes off and his leg gets pretty badly injured, which is why he's in hospital for like the entire duration of this book until right at the end. And this is what causes Sasuke to have to take over the team. Now, in the middle of all this, there's some pretty interesting stuff that happens. They find out that, oh, Himeno Lily, a pretty famous up-and-coming idol, is here in a cart at the back of the train all to herself. That's kind of interesting. And then they note sort of a pretty significant scene of the leader of this group of bandits gets killed by one of the jutsu from one of the other members of the group, because he was about to get taken out by Konohamaru. And it is interesting. They don't linger on it at all, but it is a steel release. It's the Kekkei Genkai of the ability to control metal, which we've only seen, I think, like once or twice before in like one of the Naruto movies, and I think the Gaara novel also has someone. So random steel user here ends up kind of killing someone, but you get this kind of unique kind of thing at the start where Himeno Lily reacts to the death of this character in a way that is kind of different than just sort of someone afraid of what's happening around them. And it ends up coming back, because Himeno Lily is like a very important character within this book, as we'll get to. But this obviously starts Sasuke's investigation into what happened. Why was there just a bombing on the train? What's the meaning behind all of this? But anyway, going into like the first chapter, Sasuke takes over the team and immediately gets to like, okay, I'm a teacher now. How do I actually go about doing this properly? Kakashi is really good at being a teacher. I'm not. And we immediately find out that he finds it very difficult to explain his jutsu to Boruto, Sarada, and Mitsuki. He's just so, prodigal, so talented himself that all jutsus just sort of come to Sasuke more or less straight away, and he finds it very difficult to put into words a proper explanation on how to execute these jutsus. So he really has to sort of consider that, oh yeah, like Kakashi was also very talented, but he was an excellent teacher because he could explain in technical terms what was going on with each of his jutsus. So he sort of has to take a little bit of a page from Kakashi's book and be like, okay, I'll give you guys a challenge here, where it's less a specific technique and more to just test yourself to learn more control. Each of you take this pair of dice, and what I want you to do is to use your jutsu to delicately make it so that you can always roll a double with these dice. So he's just forcing them, use your jutsu in very delicate ways. That way you have much more control over it, and this will be very helpful for you to learn sort of more advanced jutsu that requires more control. So, a pretty reasonable thing. And you get some fun moments. Like, I think Boruto originally is like trying to do it by, using the rotation of the Rasengan to make the dice kind of roll where he wants, but it's a bit of a struggle at the start. Mitsuki tries to use wind style naturally, and so on. So this ends up being the thing that Boruto focuses on more, because the actual technique that Sasuke decides he actually wants to teach them is not something Boruto is interested in, because the technique Sasuke tries to teach them is this interesting application of jutsu and science. It's the Lorenz gun concept, basically, which is basically a railgun or magnetic accelerator kind of gun cannon type thing. So Sasuke demonstrates it by basically putting two streams of lightning out, and obviously lightning then creates a magnetic field, and he throws a copper kunai in between the two lines of lightning, which fires the kunai at like incredible speed. I think they say it like breaks the sound barrier. It's so powerful. So a really kind of clever use of just like a way a ninja can basically fire a railgun type thing. Kind of really fun. Everyone's blown away by it, but the second Boruto hears the explanation that like it's based in science, he's kind of like, that's not for me. I don't really like the idea of using a jutsu where the entire foundation of it is like science. So he sticks to doing the whole dice thing to improve his delicate skills. But Sarada and Mitsuki do put a lot of effort into trying to learn this themselves, which is pretty fun to see. And you do get a little bit of a conversation between Sasuke and Boruto, where Sasuke just sort of says that, like, I know you have aversion to science because of what happened, because you used the jutsu kind of canister thing during the tuning exams, but you have to realize that that was just not the place to use something like that. You shouldn't take it that science and jutsu is all bad, but this is Boruto in his mode where he is still very much like, no, a ninja learns ninjutsu techniques. Science is science, and I don't want any involvement in that. And it takes, basically, the out arc to get Boruto switched around and actually being willing to use that sort of stuff to his advantage. Because I think probably one of the main takeaways from this book is just seeing Sasuke, just how clever he is with using his jutsu. We already know how skilled he is, the powers that he ultimately has. But he doesn't use the full sort of scope of his skill set in this book. Instead, he uses sort of more basic jutsu in clever scientific ways to sort of show his students more of what you can do. And as a teacher, he sort of learns over the course of this book that they won't learn much if I just do everything on my own. I have to be more like Naruto was during the Momoshiki incident and let my students be the ones to actually do parts of the plan, do some of the mission. Naruto gave that final Rasengan to Boruto to finish the fight, to show what it's like to fight a villain. And Sasuke lets them sort of take the lead on some of the missions here, in that he could have easily done it himself, but he's like, Sarada, scope out this like boat off in the distance and tell me how many people are on board. And she does it. It's just like this, him just learning to be a better team player as a leader and just teach people more effectively. It's pretty fun. But anyway, he leaves them with this training and goes off to investigate himself. When he comes back, it's revealed that he's been investigating the bombing at the start because he had noticed some things about the assailants based on their appearance and so on. But as he leaves, Boruto and everyone else encounter Himeno Lily. She appears to them sort of, dressed up in disguise and basically begs for their help. She has a concert going on in Konoha, and she's very worried that there's going to be an attack on her. She feels that the attack on the train was aimed at her, and that her concert will also be attacked. But she wants, for her fans, for it to go ahead, because she's only an up-and-coming idol. If she has to cancel the concert, her fans might turn against her. And you explore just that competition world of idols. And so the solution that they come up with is that, like, okay, we shouldn't take this mission on without Sasuke around or telling the village, but we kind of have to do this, don't we? So they end up agreeing to this ultimately, and the solution that they come up with is that, okay, we can't put Lily at risk. So what we're going to do is, Boruto, you are going to be transforming into Lily. You are going to be doing the performing for Lily on stage, and Lily will sort of basically be there with you sort of on the radio to guide you through, this is what I would do during this moment, during that moment. When I have to speak, I'll speak through the speaker system from the sidelines and so on. So that's all sorted. So you get this whole sequence in the book where Boruto has to basically train with Lily to learn her entire concert set. All the dance moves, to mimic sort of how Lily acts on stage, because her fans are going to know exactly what she's like. And it's just this really fun sequence as this all happens, and then eventually the concert happens. And Boruto's doing really well. He nearly messes up at one point, but the attack does come in. And again, it's the people from the start of the book, so they're willing to kill people to make what happens, and they're targeting Lily. And you get a pretty cool action set piece as Mitsuki and Sarada end up sort of working together to make the Lorenz gun actually work, as they take out like a sniper on the roof of the stadium with the railgun technique, which was pretty fun. The interesting thing, though, is that Boruto, who is obviously like transformed into Lily, his jutsu sort of begins to fail, and he has no idea why it's happening. He kind of feels like he's losing control of his body, and that the transformation is about to sort of turn off. And everything's about to go wrong at this point as they sort of get overwhelmed, until Sasuke arrives back on the scene. And cleverly, it's explained later on in the following chapter, but what he does is that he activates this wall of water jutsu around Boruto, which sort of frees him from whatever happening to him, and allows him to sort of regain control of the situation. But Sasuke has to take over, and he basically demands everyone leaves. He gets sort of all official from the village here, and he forces the situation to end. He has to end the concert. The result that this has is that the sort of the village turns a little bit against Sasuke, because they feel that he interfered in this concert when nothing was really happening, because the assailants were careful to be sort of stealthy. So like, it wasn't that they had a battle right in the middle of a concert. It was sort of happening behind the scenes. So Sasuke doing what he does made it look like he just cancelled this and just went all village official for no reason. He makes it clear that, Naruto had no involvement in this. This was a decision I made myself to end this concert for the safety of the village. But it doesn't look good for him, basically. And Boruto and everyone else blames themselves because they got involved in this mission when they didn't have to. Now, this is where the the twists and turns of the story start to happen. Behind the scenes, Sasuke realizes that him and Lily, you are part of this, basically. You are the one who've orchestrated all of this, haven't you? You are part of this group that attacked you on the train and attacked you here. Just admit it, and it's the truth. She is part of the group known as the Shigetsu Kyodan. I'm not sure why they didn't attempt to put in a translated version of that name, because I think the translation, I looked it up on the Naruto Wikipedia, it's like Purple Moon Cult. And you get an explanation of it later on. Like, Boruto literally asks, Shigetsu Kyodan, like, why is it Purple Moon and not Silver Moon? And she just explains that, like, on their island, they, at a certain time of the day, the moon looks like it's purple because of the way, like, the light reflects and stuff like that. And that's why they call themselves that. Because it's a group that's obsessed with sort of the nature of the world and so on. So it's just kind of weird that they left in this kind of really long Japanese term that doesn't mean all that much. And then they have to have a kind of weird... They have to have that scene to explain it a little bit more when it would have meant a bit more to just put in the full translation. This is not quite like a Susanoo situation where it's like a name of a like kind of god or whatever. So I find that a little bit weird. But either way, she's part of this group. They reveal that when she takes her like idol wig off, she has these like 5 piercings in the shape of a kind of constellation, which again is a signifier that she's from this group. They all wear purple. Again, they're the Purple Moon cult or religion. And Sasuke basically just explains that the general idea of this group is that they're from this really small island called Purple Moon Island, where everyone on the island is part of this religion. They're sort of extremists into like nature, where they value that above all else. They're isolationists. They don't really agree with the leadership of the Land of Water, so they're sort of to themselves. And the reason that they are attacking the Land of Fire is because they see the Land of Fire as being the main ones behind technological advancements in mass transit, the train. This is why they attack the train. Because they don't like the fact that people can get around the world easier now and travel because it gets in the way of them being isolationists, potentially. I don't think the motivation of this group is the strongest part of the book. Again, in the anime with more visuals, I think it might come across maybe a little bit better. Some rewriting, potentially, if they ever did an anime adaptation of this, would help to make this explanation a little bit better. Because then they go on to explain that like a lot of the group was founded by ninjas who sort of went to this island and formed the group. And they're obsessed with nature, but because of that, they value science quite heavily, which is why the non-ninja users use guns as well. I'm just like, what sort of an explanation is that, where they're obsessed with nature, but we're going to be like, nature, science, into technology, but they hate technology in terms of transport. Like, it's just a little muddled for me. It roughly works, but it is absolutely not the best motivation for villains I've ever seen in my life. Now, Lily explains that she isn't properly part of this group, that she left this extreme religion to become an idol and try and make a new life for herself, which is why she is targeted by her own group, basically. That's why the bombing happened, that's why the concert was attacked, and it's like, okay, cool, that makes sense, basically. Sasuke's not fully sure, but basically has her put under sort of, arrest. She's going to be watched, and it seems like, okay, they're just going to leave this go by the wayside. But then Sasuke, out of nowhere, contacts his team and is like, meet me here, we're going after the rest of this group. They're going to try and leave and go back to their homeland, And if they get back there, we won't be able to arrest them. So if we have to stop them before they properly leave the Land of Fire. So we get this kind of major action set piece where we're basically assaulting a boat that they're using to get back to their island. And there's like jet skis involved and stuff like this. So there's a bit of technology involved here. And again, this is where Sasuke allows the team to do a lot of the work here. Sarada is allowed to use her Sharingan to be the sort of scout. Mitsuki goes after a lot of the members who are on the jet skis. Boruto and Sarada sneak on board the ship and get some stuff done there. And again, Sasuke is using his jutsu all over the place. Like he creates a form of ice style by... He can't use ice style because it's a Kekkei Genkai, but he uses water style and wind style in combination with each other to create a rough version of ice style that gets the job done. He can't do anything complicated with it, but he can create ice, which is useful when they're battling sort of on the water. He uses this at the very start of the book, and even Konohamaru is just like, yeah, Sasuke, it's cool that you can do that, but like I pretty much can't do that. So he kind of gets to use that again, and the net result of this is that in the middle of everything, Lily appears and is actually revealed to be allied with the Shigetsu Hyodan, the religion which her father is actually the leader of. And they reveal that the character who is killed by the steel style user at the start of the book was actually her father. Again, this is one of those things where, like, visually, if they could create this character to be more distinct and that scene clearer, this would have all come together a little bit better. It just feels like the story just like barely comes together as it is. It's still interesting. It's just not the strongest one, which is why, like, I think it would work as like just an extra arc in the anime when they're not doing one of the manga arcs. But like, I wouldn't make a huge deal out of it. I still recommend reading it because there's enough good in here that it's definitely worth checking out, especially if you can get this book for cheap. But anyway, so she's revealed to be actually part of the group, and they reveal that her special technique, she is the one responsible for what happened to Boruto during the concert. When he was losing control of his technique, what was actually happening was that she was using her delicate application of lightning style to basically control the electrical signals in his body. So she was kind of almost like turning off his transformation jutsu, and she uses it here to sort of gain control of Boruto's body. And they established that basically once her father realized she could use lightning style very well, he forced her to train at this non-stop to develop this interesting use of lightning style to control people. And he had her use her lightning style on him constantly. And this inadvertently made him more and more extreme over the years, and she just followed him because it's her father. And they do a decent job here at getting across the idea that, Lily is this character who did honestly want to leave some of the extreme aspects of this behind her, but is loyal to where she came from ultimately. But the idol stuff wasn't all a complete lie. She didn't agree with her father's want to basically just perform terrorist acts on Konoha and so on. She was willing to be a spy and sort of gradually sort of convert people over to their religion, but she didn't agree with the terrorist stuff. So they kind of revealed that the attack on the train was actually them trying to, either get her back or kill her if required, because they kill their own members if they go against them. So it's this really interesting dynamic. Again, the twists and turns are actually quite well done. So when ultimately they defeat everyone, we're left in this situation where the ship has been really badly damaged. It's about to sink, and Lily is defeated. Because the thing they reveal is that what Sasuke did before to stop this electrical control of Boruto from happening before, and what can be done now, which Sarada uses, because one of the things that Sasuke does is that he actually hands Sarada one of the scientific ninja tool, jutsu kind of canister things, containing the special water style that he used, which is that it's this pure water style with no impurities, so it doesn't actually conduct electricity. And this is how Sasuke stopped it from happening. Again, jutsu with science to gain an advantage here. So another thing that like Boruto, is missing out on by hating science as much as he does. So Boruto sort of learns his lesson over the course of this book, but Lily decides she's going to jump into the crashing ship and basically sacrifice herself here. Like the other members, they'd rather die than be captured. Boruto jumps in after her, and we get this dynamic of, she thinks about the religion and that they're expected to die for their cause, and this will help them in the end, and all this sort of stuff. But when she realizes she's actually alive, she is ultimately happy that she's been saved, and that, in a way the group has been defeated, and maybe she should attempt to, be sort of a bridge between the Leaf Village and her people. And so they allow, like Naruto and everyone, they allow her to sort of have a big interview on TV where she just reveals the honest truth of, she does want to be an idol, that she was part of this group. None of this was Sasuke's fault. It was the Shigetsu Kyodan's fault. But that she's going to act as sort of a ambassador in a way between the two nations. And again, it's this unique new take that they have here, where instead of just locking away all these young characters who make these mistakes, they're going to help them down a better path and give them a use going forward. And so, Lily is going to be able to help things going forward. That we're not just going to completely abandon the people of this island because they sort of have outdated views and are extremists, but maybe we can over time help them to slightly alter their views, respecting them in some ways, but changing some of the more extreme views. It's a pretty light ending. Does it come together perfectly well? Not quite, but it is entertaining, and that I would like to see this animated, in that Lily seems like a pretty, fun, interesting character who actually has a nice little bit of depth to her. The Boruto, doubting science fits for that section of the story, and Sasuke being kind of cool and interesting, but also having a bit of development himself of just trying to be a better teacher. That comes together nicely for me. And then there's enough sort of new jutsus in here to keep the action interesting. With the steel style user at the start, Sasuke doing a bit of sort of fake ice style, Sarada getting to use one of the jutsu kind of container fire things, and all that sort of stuff. The Lorenz gun seems like I'd love to see that animated. There's enough going on here that I definitely do recommend and like it. Like I said, the only criticism would just be that I found the villain motivation, the explanation of the group, to be a little muddled and kind of confusing. I get what they were saying, but it feels contradictory when you read it. And because they're not super fleshed out all that much, it just makes it seem okay, this feels like a lot of those anime-only arcs from Naruto, Naruto Shippuden, and Boruto, where the villain has something behind them, but it's only so good. But perfect for a handful of episodes. Don't go overboard with it, but I'd like to see this adapted someday, definitely. So there are my thoughts on Naruto's Sasuke's story, Star Pupil. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are if you've read it, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.